Time for color. I'm so excited to show you guys how to use these chalk pastels today to color in our desert landscape. So the first thing is these pastels that we are going to be using today, these chalk pastels, are brand new, and the problem with them being brand new is that they have kind of a, I don't know, something on them that keeps them from chalking very well on the finished side of the factory side, I guess is what I want to say. So it doesn't want to come off very well on that side, as you can see right there. So if I break them in half, only in half, we're not trying to get little tiny pieces, but when you break them in half, you get rid of that factory edge and they go on a lot easier. Now, as we are adding color to these areas, we want to keep in mind that we don't need to color the whole thing, because as you can see, there's a lot of chalk dust right here, and if I keep going and fill in that whole area, I'm going to have way too much chalk dust. So I'm going to add another color here. What I'm trying to do is I've got my sun right here, and my sun is going to be shining, so this part of each of my rocks is going to be lighter than this side. So I'm adding a little bit of red there, and I'm also going to add just a little bit of brown as well. And these are really fun because of their blendability. So now I'm going to take one clean finger. That's important. Every time that you go to do this part, you want to make sure that your finger is pretty clean. I have the sponges for you guys so that if your finger is really messy, you can kind of just wipe it off, okay? And then you want to make sure it's pretty dry too before you go in and do this part. So what you're going to do is with one finger, because I don't want to see your hands completely covered in chalk, the tips of your fingers, okay, fine, we understand, but our whole hands should never be covered in chalk. Okay, so as we do this part, I'm going to start with the lighter section, and I'm going to just rub the chalk into my paper. And I'm starting with the lighter section because if I start with the darker section, I'm going to be taking that dark in with me. So I want to just start with the light section, and then I can move into that darker area and pull some of that over, and it just blends beautifully. It's really quite fun. And then when you are done blending all that chalk in, you shouldn't have a whole lot left, and the easiest way to get rid of any excess is to just tap it on its edge, on its end, and you're able to get any of that excess off. So I have my first little section of my rock colored in, and I'm going to color most of my rocks in that same manner, trying to think of where that light's going to touch, and then where is it going to be a little bit more shadowy or darker. And then as for the sky, I want a really bright blue sky. Now, I've seen a lot of these done where, pardon me, where they don't want the sky to be blue, they want it to be a sunset, which looks beautiful too. But the way that this piece is going to look phenomenal is if we have, contrasts in our colors. So to do a contrasting color, we want to look at the color wheel, and we want to see what is opposite on the color wheel from our oranges and our reds. And the opposite of oranges and reds is blues and purples. So if you're going to do your rocks in the oranges and reds, then you want to do your sky in the blues and purples. But if you want a sunset sky, which is going to be in oranges and reds, then you're going to do those shadowy colors in blues and purples on your rocks. Both look fantastic, but it's your choice. You're gonna have to be the one to make that decision on your art piece. So I've gone ahead and chosen a couple of blues and a white because I want to have some clouds, I guess, up in my sky. I want some variation. I don't want it to just be all one solid color. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start in one area, and I'm gonna start in this area over here. And I'm going to go in and I'm just going to throw in some scribbles of my lightest blue. This is when it's going to be the one that is taking up the most of my space. And then I'm going to go in with my darker blue and add just a few little squiggles of that darker blue in there as well. And then some white. And I'm going to put my white in where I have some blank paper. I don't want to put it all over. I just want to put it in a few locations to show that I have some bright clouds kind of showing through. Okay, and then once again, after you've put all of your color in, you can take a finger and you can blend it all together. And if you don't have some of those brighter white areas, you can go in and add a few more just to brighten up some of those spots. And I would do my whole sky like that. If I've got areas where it needs to be brighter blue, I can put some more blue in. Just make sure that you're always blending and make sure you're doing it with a clean finger and you will be good to go. Okay, I'm gonna finish it up. I have my sky done, and after I finish a section, I'm going to make sure I put all of my pastels back in the container where they go. And I want to just show you how these pastels are. As I've broken them, if I've broken them, I'm going to make sure I put the two parts, the two halves, back together in the same part, in the same little slot, because that's going to keep them nice and neat and easy to put back on away. If they're stacked and all jumbled, it's going to be really hard and they're not going to stay as nice as this. So if we want to keep our pastels easy to get to and clean like they are now, then that's what we need to do. So I'm counting on everybody to follow my lead in that. All right, so now that my sky is done, and I love it, I think it's looking marvelous, and my whole background is done, all my rocks, and I like that this is actually glowing a little bit brighter than this side, and that just kind of happened by mistake, but I really like that. I'm going to move down into the next section. One thing that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to start at the top and work my way down, because if I start down here and then I'm working up here, my whole arm is going to be smudging all of my work down here. So I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. So I've decided to use a little bit of purple instead of the brown I used up here in my more shadowy parts of my rock, just because it's a little bit different contrast, and I think it looks pretty awesome with it. So I'm going to add my little bit of purple here, and then I'm going to do my ground at the bottom here and sign it, and I will be about done. So I'll be right back with you in just a second. So I've got all my base color down, and the next thing I want to do is I want to put in some shadows. Now I know we've already put in our shading around our rocks, and I even have some in my plants and on my turtle. I have all of that kind of shading, but I'm talking about the shadows that all of these rocks would cast onto the ground. So what I'm going to do to create my shadows is I'm going to take a complementary color, which means it's across from each other on the color wheel. So for instance, up in this area, I've got kind of a yellowish, orangish color, and opposite of yellow-orange on the color wheel is going to be a blue-purple. So I'm going to take a color that is kind of a bluish purple, and I'm going to create my shadows, thinking about where my sun is and how those shadows are going to be cast. So since my sun is here, these shadows for these rocks are going to be cast this direction and this direction. And you could go ahead and cast the top of your archway as well if you want to, or you could just do those sections there. But make sure that everything that is above the ground is casting a shadow somewhere. So now my sun is coming this direction, right? So this is actually going to go this way. So this would actually go all the way across here. But I'm not going to come into my hill right here because this is a whole nother section. I'm actually going to scrub that little area out. Okay, and I'll have this part. Okay, and maybe right here I'll show that that little rock sticks out a little bit. All right, I think that's pretty good for my shadows up there. I have a pretty good yellowy orange color down here as well, so I'm going to use the same color to create some of my rock shadows. And again, thinking about where the sun is and what those would reflect. Include my turtle here and all of my plants. So there's going to be a few shadows down here, and some of them would go off the page, so I'm not going to worry about those, obviously. But I want to make sure that all of my shadows are looming here. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and rub those in gently. I don't want to get rid of a lot of the marks that I made, so I'm going to do that part gently, just quickly. And then the last thing, because as we've done this, we've lost a lot of our black lines, and we want those to be sharper so that they show up. So that we have some, everything stands out a little bit more. Okay, so I've got all my shadows. I'm loving this. I think this is looking really good. Staying positive. There's always things that I look at and I see and I think, oh, I think I would have changed that if I'd have done it again. But you know what? It's done and I'm happy with it, and that's what's important. So I'm going to go ahead and take my black crayon. Last step is to just go back around nice and heavy around all of you're just going to trace over all of your black lines just to sharpen up your image. And I've seen a couple of things. I've seen where in the background they don't trace over, and what that does is it makes it look a little bit more foggy maybe in the distance, which oftentimes in the distance we're not going to have as sharp an image or as bright a colors as we do in the foreground. And so if you choose to do that, that's fine. It is your painting, so you have to be the one to make those final decisions. And as I'm doing this, I am being very careful that my arm is not rubbing across my paper because I don't want to smudge all of my hard work. I'm also being very careful of where I'm touching so that I'm not my whole hand down. I'm just using a couple of fingers because I do need to hold my paper in place. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and then it will be your turn to get started. Alright, I have mine all traced, and the very last thing is to make sure that you sign your work. And I always sign mine in the bottom left or right corner. Oh, and I'm not gonna have room. Oops, that's okay, it's still my signature. And there is my completed piece. It is your turn. I can't wait to see how yours turn out.